Tonight's episode of Legacy Battle is brought to you by Atlas Benefits.
Atlas Benefits has solutions for your insurance needs. Atlas Benefits can help you obtain Medicare, health, or life insurance and employee benefits. You can find them on the web at www.atlasbenefits.com.
Or you can contact Rob Ducey or Roy Smith at 727-600-2892 and mention Legacy Battle Podcast. Atlas Benefits has all the solutions for your insurance needs. Enjoy the show. This is Legacy Battle. Make sure you hit subscribe on YouTube, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Join the Facebook group. I'm Michael Adams, creator of Legacy Battle. My panelists tonight from the Gridiron Battle Zone, Brian King, Penn State Collegiate All-Star, Kevin Adams, Ball State athlete, Paul Habicott. And normally we have a All-Star, Pro Bowler, Hall of Famer here. Tonight, something a little different. We got a gentleman here. He starred in TV and films to include The Cutting Edge, Fire in the Sky, Memphis Belle. Did some guest spots on 2.5 Men, Hardball, one of Kevin's favorite movies there, and 8 Men Out, which is going to come up tonight in our debate, in which he played Shoeless Joe Jackson. He's received over 35 awards for his work. He has a new movie coming out February 10th. It's a Manson Brothers Midnight Zombie Massacre. You know, zombie movies is all the rage nowadays. And that's going to be released in 10 cities and on demand. So make sure you hit that up next Friday night, the 10th of September, and watch his movie on demand. I'm sure he'll appreciate that. So as I was saying, our guest is actor D.B. Sweeney. D.B., thank you for being here.
Thank you. Good to be on.
Oh, this is like I don't like fan up very often on this show, but I'm definitely fanning up over this one. So I really appreciate it. But so our debate tonight is going to be the greatest baseball film in the drama category, which is a different debate for the four of us. As I said earlier, we always just debating sports. So this is sports movies. It's still in our genre. So, you know, if 1,000 of you were watching this like last month, stay tuned because this is going to be good. And we're going to start out tonight with Field of Dreams.
Field of Dreams is a classic. Everybody knows this movie. Released May 5th, 1989. Costner starred as a farmer named Ray. One day he's walking through his farm. Hears a voice, if you build it, he will come. He envisions a baseball field in the middle of his cornfield and Shoeless Joe Jackson standing in the middle. So he built the field while telling his wife about the White Sox scandal, 1919 scandal. And sure enough, Shoeless Joe appears and brings the 1919 White Sox team to his field. No one outside of Ray's family can see the players, and, you know, they're facing bankruptcy with their farm. You know, this field attracted multiple ghosts of baseball legends. His brother-in-law tried to convince him to sell the farm. You know, Ray goes on a field trip to get Terrence Mann, a writer, after him and his wife had the same dream that, you know, they were going to a baseball game at Fenway Park together. Both of them hear a voice while they're at the game saying, go the distance at that game. And they saw Archie Graham's stats, who was a baseball player that only played one game for the Giants. But he had passed a few years earlier than that. So on the way back, they pick up a young hitchhiker who actually ended up being a young Archie Graham. And they brought him back to Iowa to Ray's baseball field. Ray was estranged from his father. He never got to reconcile their issues before he passed. His brother-in-law and him one day get into a scuffle, knock his daughter off the bleachers. At this point, Archie Graham, who took a different career in the medical field, steps off the field and turns into his old self and helps the daughter. And he gave up his chance to play baseball with these legends on this magical field. At that point is when everyone can see the baseball players, and it basically saved his farm, saved his family. Players exit the field out in the outfield. where the stalks are. Terrence Mann goes with them. One player is left behind, and it's actually Ray's father, and asks Ray to play catch. This movie is a classic. It's great. It was nominated for 3 Academy Awards. Best Picture was one of them. It was selected by the National Film Registry as being culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant. The budget for this movie was only 15 mil. Brought in 84.4 mil at the box office. By the film's 20th anniversary, approximately 65,000 people visit this baseball field annually. That's how much of an impact this movie has had on this country. And the MLB just recently had a game there on August 12th. Chicago White Sox and the Yankees played a game there at the same location where this field was at in the movie. Kevin Costner was there to welcome them onto the field as they entered the field from the cornstalk outfield wall. I got chills literally when I watched that opening. It was one of the best openings I've ever seen to a sporting event. Bleacher Report listed this as number 3 as the best all-time movie for baseball. None of the other movies we're talking about tonight are on that list. And Ranker.com did the 50 greatest sports drama movies, listed this number 6, and it was the only baseball movie in the top 9. None of your movies were even mentioned in the top 10. So this has got to be the best baseball drama movie.
So they call this movie the movie that can make men cry. I mean, it gets emotional. DB, I want to ask you about this. Ray Liotta plays Shoeless Joe Jackson, and it seems like his character of Shoeless Joe is like completely different than yours. I mean, 2 different characters, but you're playing the same person. So what was your thoughts on his choice and his persona of Shoeless Joe, and what do you think of the movie?
I love the movie. I think it's it's a really great movie. In many ways, though, it's not really a baseball movie because it's a fathers and sons movie, and the baseball in it is very minimal and actually not very good. And I think Ray is not a baseball player, and he really didn't have time to prepare from what I've heard. So his Shoeless Joe is not when I played him, I batted lefty and I threw righty the way Shoeless Joe did. And Ray had it backwards. He was batting righty and throwing lefty, and and just the other players they had on the field, in my opinion, did not look like very good baseball players. So with that said, though, I think it's a phenomenal movie, and Kevin Costner's tremendous in it, and Tim Busfield is great, and James Earl Jones, and all the actors are tremendous, and Amy Madigan, and I mean, up and down the cast, it's one of the best acted movies, but it's not really a baseball movie. I mean, there's really no baseball moment in it that really turns the action of the story.
Paul, I'm not going to ask a lot of questions of my panels tonight because I want to keep this to DB, but Paul, you are a high caliber softball player in the state of Florida. How much time would an actor need to learn to bat the opposite hand of what he's been batting his whole life, in your opinion?
Yeah, you have to get the reps down so you don't look so stiff and uncomfortable doing it. So, I mean, I think the only way to do it is have some pitches thrown to you, get at least comfortable with it. But it would take a while. And I know what DB is saying. It's hard to fake it. And so if you got that awkward movement and people don't believe you could actually hit a ball, that will hurt the credibility of the sports film there.
And DB, I was going to give you credit for hitting lefty. Did you have to learn to hit lefty, or were you a lefty naturally?
Yeah, I played baseball. I played 1 year of college baseball. I played actually after this movie. I played 1 year pro in Australia for the Perth Heat. I was always a right-handed hitter and a right-handed thrower. And John Sales, the director, 8 Men Out, said, what do you think you can do? Can you learn to hit lefty? And I said, I don't think so. I mean, I don't want this to be Pride of the Yankees. One of the other movies that we're going to talk about, which is another great drama, which is not really a baseball movie either. So anyway, he said, well, do what you can. And I had about 5.5 months, and I spent the whole time, I turned down another movie, and I spent the whole time working on my swing. And the last 2 months before we filmed 8 Men Out, I spent with the Kenosha Twins in the Midwest League. And I rode around on the buses, dressed for every game, took BP, and ended up getting one at-bat at the end, just like Moonlight Graham. So, it was a lot of tie-ins between my actual life and this movie.
I know it was Billy Crystal once. He got to play in a preseason game for the Yankees and pitched against the Pirates. So he got the bat once too, and he said that was just like the greatest moment of his life. So that's cool.
Well, I pitched a perfect game too against the Pirates.
No, he didn't pitch. He got the hit once. He got the bat. Yeah.
He's joking, man.
Jeter told him to swing at the first pitch, so he did. And he popped out, but he made contact against professional Pirates.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
But Paul, let's move on to your movie, The Natural.
Yeah, The Natural's from '84. It was nominated for 4 Academy Awards and a Golden Globe. Most of it was filmed at War Memorial Stadium in Buffalo, but this movie is not just a great baseball movie, it's just a great sports movie. It's got probably, in my opinion, the best music, the soundtrack of all the movies we're talking about. You got your father and son moments. This movie was preceded The Field of Dreams, so you had a little bit of a touching father-son moment with this. You got like the old rookie like Bull Durham in this. You got underdog heroism like Rudy in this. You got a great Kim Basinger scene in a fur coat. You got, some corruption in baseball, like 8 Men Out. And if if people like the drama of Curt Schilling's bloody sock in the World Series that one year, you kind of have that with this, only it's in the form of like a bloody shirt and belly in this last at bat. But we're introduced to Roy Hobbs, who's a pitching prospect. He's opening the movie, he's playing catch with his father in the backyard. His father ends up dying of a heart attack under a tree. Later on, that tree struck by lightning, and of course, why not? He takes one of the branches and makes the famous Wonder Boy bat out of it with the lightning bolt insignia. So he gets called by the Cubs at the age of 19, so he sneaks off, throws some rocks at his childhood sweetheart's window, which is Iris, played by Glenn Close. Tells her the good news. They kind of sneak off for some young teenage love, which isn't shown on camera, but that comes back later on, as that sort of thing always does. So you kind of fast forward. They're on a train with, I guess, what's his agent. And he's on the train with this guy named the Whammer, who kind of looks oddly similar to Babe Ruth. Roy's agent. You got kind of like an agent there that makes a bet that Roy can strike out this Whammer with 3 pitches. So this reporter, Max Mercy, who's played by Robert Duvall, sort of witnesses a suit and tie wearing Whammer strike out on 3 pitches. And there's some foreshadowing going on there, because during this time, they're reading in the paper that all these top athletes are being murdered with a single silver bullet. So we see kind of a surprise evil casting of Barbara Hershey playing like the murderous temptress Harriet Bird. And then all of a sudden, 20 minutes into the film, you're slapped across the face in this like WTF moment, because he strikes out the Whammer, Harriet Bird turns her attention to him and basically shoots him in a hotel room. And we think he's dead. But no, 16 years later, you're kind of gone into a dark tunnel, going up to a dugout. Apparently there's no security, because this older but still very handsome Roy Hobbs appears to the New York Knights manager and kind of surprisingly part owner, Pop Fisher, who's played by Wilford Brimley. He has a rocky start with the New York Knights. That's kind of an understatement, but in the first of 3 very key scenes, they finally give him a chance in the batting cages, and this dude hits bombs. Everybody's all like, whoa, the echoes of it going off the seats. Problem is they got Bump out in right field, who's dating Mimo, who's played by Kim Basinger. But of course, Bump dies, and how's he die? He goes through the right field fence going after a fly ball. So Kim Basinger kind of moves, on to Pine Tar and Roy Hobbs' bat, if you know what I mean, and that kind of puts him into a slump. He's now just struggling, but he visits good old Wrigley Field, and sort of in like an angelic scene, his childhood sweetheart stands up and is all in white. It's kind of an unforgettable scene, and we got epic scene number 2 here, because he sees her. She's looking at about as angelic as Michael Adams' Facebook profile picture there, and he just hits this bomb into the clock at Wrigley Field, smashing all the pieces of the clock, and they win the game, and he's out of this slump. And so we go to the end of the movie here. We kind of find out through some backroom seedy scenes with a great bad guy, Darren McGavin, played by Gus Sands, that basically the ownership of this team wants the team to fail so they can take over full ownership from Pop. So, Roy ends up going into the hospital. He says, I got to play one more game on Monday night against Pittsburgh, the team that Pop Fisher's always bitching about losing to. So he's 0 for 2 that night, striking out, looking terrible. And sure enough, childhood sweetheart Iris slips a note into the dugout, basically says, "Hey, I have a 16-year-old son. He's yours. Surprise." So Roy reads the note. He's all flustered, and he goes up with runners on the corners, 2 outs. And that's epic scene number 3. He smashes the lights out and right in, I think it's center field. Very, very shoddy electrical work because for some reason the lights in the entire stadium seem to go down. And as he's rounding the bases, it rains on home plate, crushes the hearts of the criminals, and it warms all of ours. And then Pop gets to keep the team.
Should have said spoiler alert when the show started.
Hey, man, got to see it. It's from '84.
Yeah. So I think Mickey from Rocky got it right when he said women weaken legs, and that's exactly what happened in The Natural. But DB, I'm sure you've seen this film. I want to ask you about the score of it, written by the legend Randy Newman, who's just done so much in Hollywood. Like, as an actor, when you're watching your scenes, you're probably not seeing it with the music in it. Like, how much does that affect the take of a scene when they're putting in the background music?
Well, there's no music when you're filming it. It's very quiet when you're filming. They want your dialogue to be clean, but I think The Natural is the most mythic of all these stories that we're talking about. Even though they all have mythic elements, it's the one that's trying most obviously to be a mythic story, and it's the most beautifully photographed. Although Robert Richardson shot 8 Men Out, and he's probably the best cameraman in Hollywood right now, director of photography. He's done all Quentin Tarantino's movies, and he's the man right now. But Caleb Deschanel was the director of photography on Natural, and between his photography and Randy Newman's music, you kind of overlook how thin of a movie it is. And on a plot level, it's great performances, great characters, great photography, great wardrobe, but it's a little bit hollow at the center for me. I still enjoy watching chunks of it, but I find that it's overlong, and I think that there's a better movie hiding inside The Natural that they never made.
It's an interesting take. I like that. Brian, let's move to your movie here, 8 Men Out.
All right, 8 Men Out. Well, this movie came out in 1988. It was a dramatization of the 1919 Black Sox scandal. It had plenty of star power. You had John Cusack, Charlie Sheen, Christopher Lloyd, John Mahoney, David Strathairn, Michael Rooker, and of course DB Sweeney as Shoeless Joe Jackson. This film starts on the eve of the 1919 World Series. The Chicago White Sox are huge favorites over the Cincinnati Reds. Team owner Charlie Comiskey proclaimed that it was not whether or not the Sox would win, but just by how many games it would take. But Comiskey had one fatal flaw: his treatment of his players. He shortchanged pitcher Eddie Seacott on a bonus. He gave players flat champagne to celebrate their winning the pennant. And, this made the players very vulnerable when they were approached by gamblers to purposely lose the World Series in exchange for money. 8 players ultimately accepted the offer. After the World Series was lost, there was an investigation, then a trial. The players avoided jail time, but they were banned from the game forever. The actors, script writers, etc., all did an excellent job with this film, and they were sure to include the legendary scene during which a young Chicago street kid hollers out, "Say it ain't so, Joe," to Joe Jackson as he leaves the courthouse. So I think my favorite part of this movie was the interactions that Buck Weaver has, who was played by John Cusack, had with the Chicago street kids. He kind of really gave a sense of how conflicted that he was about aligning himself with his compromised teammates, and how the adult world kind of complicates the simple, innocent pleasures of life. I love this movie all the way around. I love movies that take a true story and just sort of just lay it out for you and try to be as truthful to how things actually were. I mean, I love the The way that when you're watching, you feel like you're back in 1919. It just has that great feel to it. It's just one of my all-time favorites, and and I think it accurately captures one of the most legendary, notorious stories in baseball history.
So Brian, you mentioned that this is one of the most historically accurate sports movies. You look at the movie like The Babe, like totally inaccurate, and the movie I'm going to represent in a little bit, Pride of the Yankees, not very accurate either. DB, this is your movie. I mean, tell us about it, like maybe a little bit about, filming it, and just an all-star cast. It seemed like even some of the minor roles were big name actors. You got Nancy Travis as a wife in it. You got the dad from Frasier as the head manager. I mean,
John Mahoney.
Yeah, just a huge cast. So tell us about this movie.
Yeah, it was a great cast. Christopher Lloyd is another actor that was in there.
Yes.
Michael Lerner. I mean, every performance I think is really strong. I think, hindsight, I love all these movies. I'm not trying to be like like a wet blanket. I just think that, the most satisfying baseball movie to me is Bull Durham, because it stays with itself the most, and it only has really three characters that you have to stay with, and then everybody else is peripheral. I think the mistake that Eight Men Out made, John Sayles, who wrote it, also directed it, which is always, problematic. I mean, I know the same thing happened with Bull Durham, but John Sayles, I think he had too many characters in Eight Men Out. So you got like 23 characters you're trying to keep track of. And a lot of us young baseball players, Cusack and I kind of look the same or similar when you glance at us. And so I just felt like for the audience, it was hard to keep track of who's who. I think that the movie would have benefited from a little bit of shaving down a few storylines and focusing more on the players. But, that's just my opinion. I think that the photography is beautiful. I think the music's great. I think the costumes are great. And, it was a low budget movie, much lower budget movie than The Natural or Field of Dreams or any of these other movies. The budget was about $6 million in 1987. And, that to make a movie set in 1919 where you got to, you need trains, you need cars, you need clothes, all these characters. It's an amazing accomplishment for $6 million. But, I think that the baseball is the strength of the movie. I could play. Charlie Sheen was a good player. David Strathairn. The baseball is very detailed and very believable. So I think that's one of the strengths of the movie, and the performances of the actors, I think. So, it's a movie I enjoy watching. Of all the many movies I've made, it's one that I can pop in and watch a chunk of it without getting too nauseous. So I guess that's kind of a good sign. But, I like all these movies. I don't want to come off like, Mr. Critic or anything like that. I'm just, they're all, we're trying to assess them and compare them. And so these are just my opinions of what would have made some of these movies stronger or where their weaknesses lie.
Well, it was not a financial success when it came out, but it did become a cult favorite film, which sometimes those are better, because they last the stand of time. Kevin, your movie was definitely a financial success, so I'll give it credit on that one. And Paul, yours was kind of like it made some money, but it wasn't considered like a high financial success. But Eight Men Out definitely became a cult film, and gosh, you can catch it on all sorts of services now, streaming services, even the free services. I watched it on Pluto not too long ago. So let's move into our final movie tonight, and we're going back a ways for this one. This is going back to 1942 for Pride of the Yankees. Starred Gary Cooper, fantastic actor. Is playing Yankees great Lou Gehrig, which of course is a sad story on the whole. Lou Gehrig died in 1941, I believe. So about a year before this movie came out, Lou Gehrig passed away. But this movie received 11 Oscar nominations, which is going to top all three movies that we're talking about tonight. So, and that includes some of the big ones: Best Picture, Best Writing, Best Actor for Gary Cooper, and Best Actress for Teresa Wright. So quite a few Oscar noms going on there. Now, as Paul had mentioned before the show started, there wasn't as many movies coming out back then, so that probably helped his cause. But American Film Institute has it at 22nd all time on the list of the 100 most inspiring films. So that's a pretty nice accomplishment there. And it's third in the sports category for top 10 films. And Garrick was named the 25th greatest hero in film. So that's a lot of accolades for this movie right there. And who could forget the quote, ranked 38th greatest quote by AFI. Today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth. That's still said today in people, you know. I think it might have been higher than May the Force be with you, but I might be wrong with that one. So that's pretty cool. And then, you know, that was from the iconic closing of the movie where he's giving his farewell speech at Yankee Stadium. You know, there was some real baseball players there that filmed their own parts. Babe Ruth, the real Babe Ruth, was part of this. Bill Dickey as well, just to name a couple guys there. So this movie, it does tell the story of Lou Gehrig, sort of. His life off the field more than so much on the field. He had an overbearing mother. She wanted him to be like an engineer and go to college. He said he was going to play in Hartford, which was the minor league team for the Yankees. She thought it was Harvard, you know. So a lot of mommy issues going on. But sadly, most of this movie was Hollywooded up and inaccurate. There's no proof that he ever promised some kid he was going to hit 2 home runs right after Babe Ruth had promised he was going to hit 1 home run. So that's kind of historically inaccurate. There's some other things in there, even like stats and stuff like that they didn't get entirely correct. But a fabulous acting job. It's considered one of the greatest sports films of all time. DB, I know this is way before your time, but I'm guessing you've seen it. You know, what do you think of the acting performances? The baseball wasn't real great in it, but you got to look at the time period as well. So what are your thoughts on it?
I think it's one of the most overrated movies of all time. I think, you know,
I'm going down today.
Yeah, it doesn't hold up well at all. You know, I love Gary Cooper. He's one of my favorite actors of all time, but I find this to be a really corny, hackneyed movie. And we all love the story of Lou Gehrig, but the baseball is the worst of any movie we're talking about. I mean, Gary Cooper was such an unathletic guy that they actually had to flip the logo of the Yankees uniform. He batted right-handed and he ran to third base, and then they flipped the negative over.
No way.
And he's still really bad. They have to show him from like the stadium distance for it to even be remotely believable. He has a really bad stunt double. So, I mean, you know, it is a different time and everything, but some of my favorite movies, I mean, Citizen Kane is from that same era and it holds up great to this day. So, you know, and I know that's not a fair comparison, a baseball movie versus one of the greatest movies ever made, but I do think that this movie skates along on an enormous amount of goodwill, which is not entirely earned.
Well, I know you swung the bat really well in your movie. I've seen it probably 100 times, to be honest. But John Cusack did not swing the bat very well. Even when they were showing the one scene where he's just taking the warm-up swings, horrible swings. So I'm going to throw that out there just for my sake of argument. But
yeah, Charlie Sheen could play. Charlie, they tried to actually build things. Charlie's character is not very important in the story, but he was a big star, so they kept trying to find ways to put him on screen. And so he was a good athlete. And Michael Rooker, who played Chick Gandil, he's a tremendous athlete, but he's not a good baseball player. But he knew how to pretend. And you know, everybody really wanted to make the first baseball movie where the baseball was up to snuff. What we didn't know is that, you know, at the same exact time, Kevin Costner was knocking it out of the park as Crash Davis in Bull Durham, and he's phenomenal. I mean, he's a switch hitting catcher, and he's believable from both sides of the plate. He's tremendous receiving the ball and throwing the ball. He has the demeanor of a minor league baseball player. I mean, so, you know, I think those two movies have the best baseball of any of these movies we're talking about, or any other baseball movies, except maybe Major League has some good baseball in it too. And for love of the game, again, Costner, you know, he's a very good athlete, very good baseball player, and a movie star. So, you know, I'll watch any baseball movie that guy makes.
Well, you mentioned Charlie Sheen. I know Charlie, he's been quoted as saying that he actually juiced for Major League to get his fastball up another 10 miles per hour. So he was quite a good baseball player, you know, at least according to him in high school. So
he's pretty good. He's no stranger to foreign substances either. So
touche. All right, before we move into our vote, just a quick shout out to some movies that just missed tonight's cut. For Love of the Game was one of them. DB mentioned that. 42. Chadwick Boseman, awesome. Harrison Ford, I love. Awesome movie. Bang the Drum Slowly, another old film, but pretty good film. And Moneyball with Brad Pitt. You know, that's pretty accurate as well as far as historically what was going on there. So let's move into our vote tonight. Brian, you're in my top left corner. What film you taking? Obviously, guys, as usual, you can't take your own.
Right. Well, I mean, when I look at these films, there's one that just emotionally connected with me more than the others, and that's Field of Dreams. I mean, you said it's the one that can make guys cry. I mean, there's still scenes where I got to kind of hold the tears back when I watch them, even now, how many years later. And then what it's done, how it's just stayed, in the mainstream, and with the Field of Dreams game that we just had here not too long ago. So yeah, I mean, it's just I got to go with that one. It's just number one for me.
So I'll go next. From an emotional standpoint, I'm going to agree with you, Brian. I kind of had to hold it back the first time I saw that movie. As not as a child, but definitely in my later teenage years or early college years. However, I do agree with DB's comment that it's not really as much a baseball movie as some of the others we're talking about. So I think for that reason, I'm not going to vote for it, even though it does have a good emotional impact. So I am actually taking 8 Man Out, and I'm not taking it just because DB's here. I'm taking it because of the historical accuracies. I also feel that the baseball playing in it is definitely the best baseball playing from that standpoint. So, Kevin.
Brian, you actually I was going to do another little point for my movie there, but you actually said what I was going to say, that it's still in the mainstream, and we had the game again. But I'm going to have to agree with Mike. That's very rare.
Yeah, write this down.
Sibling rivalry, but
in 50 shows, I think you've agreed with me twice, so that's impressive.
So eight Men Out. It's got the better baseball playing in it, and the accuracy of the history in the movie too.
Paul?
I don't know. I guess 8 Men Out is great, but the topic depresses me. I mean, all I can think of is Cusack's character and how he got just screwed on that. And I guess Field of Dreams, I've been to the field. It's not a baseball movie, but I guess the baseball field is the star. The only drawback is that Kevin is the one arguing it. So I guess I'll go Field of Dreams, although I picked my favorite movie for myself. But I guess I'll go Field of Dreams just because of I love the folklore of it. And then I watched the 8-12 game we just played, and I think it'll stay around a lot for a long time.
So DB, I'm coming to you for your vote. You can break this tie. You can vote for your own movie, or you can pick one of the other ones, and we end in a tie. It's your call.
No, I'd say of all these movies we've talked about, the most satisfying movie is Field of Dreams for sure. It's so emotionally accurate and effective. The music's great. The cinematography is great. The acting is great. Every performance is spot on. Anytime you can hear James Earl Jones say baseball, it's a good day. So, I think Field of Dreams is tremendous. And, the baseball aspect of it is, it's put to the side intentionally because they got more important fish to fry, all the issues that the characters are dealing with. And I think it's a phenomenal movie, and I think it deserves all the praise it's gotten over the years, and especially recently with that game. That wasn't the first game ever at the Field of Dreams. I actually played in the first game after the movie was finished. There was a Hollywood versus retired Major League game like 2 years after the movie came out.
Oh, wow.
And some of the pros that were there were Joe Pepitone and Bob Gibson and Fergie Jenkins. And it was really, really great. And we had on the actor side, it was me and Meatloaf and a couple other guys. Chad Lowe was there. It was really a fun day. And everybody was trying to figure out who was going to be the first guy to hit one into the corn. And we were all taking BP. And, the corn is actually, they built that other field to have the Yankee White Sox game, obviously. But in the movie, the corn is really kind of close. It's more like a, 260 in the power alleys. It's not really a bomb to hit it in the corn. So in BP, we're all trying to, we're hitting them in the corn. And Bob Gibson was the starting pitcher for the Hall of Famers and the baseball guys. And he didn't like a bunch of actors thinking they were going to hit a home run off of him. So he was kind of annoyed by that. And I was batting third, and I had hit several in batting practice in there. So I dug in. I was like, I'm going to hit one in the corner off Bob Gibson. And the first pitch, he threw it right at my head. It must have been 88, 90 miles an hour. Like, it was not a friendly, and he dumped me down good. And then he stared at me, and it was like the real experience of hitting off of Bob Gibson. He stared down at me like, don't you ever dig in on me. And then he kind of leaned over, and he just goes like this, like, because I figured the next pitch is going to be a curveball. I'm going to look stupid on that. And he just gave me the fastball coming at you, and he threw one down the middle, and I just, hit one like a single, and I took my single. I wasn't trying to, so I did happen to get the first hit at the Field of Dreams in the first game that was ever there.
That's awesome.
Nice.
Well, a win for Kevin tonight. So Kevin, you get first question in our Q&A for DB about his career.
Awesome. So I want to take you back to 92, the cutting edge.
Love it.
So I read that you and your co-star didn't know how to skate going into this movie, and I'm just curious, how was that, training to be able to look like you're an actual skater for that movie, and what was that experience like filming that?
Yeah, I had about 3 movies early in my career. 8 Men Out, I spent all this time learning to hit left-handed, like 5.5 months. And then Lonesome Dove, I didn't know how to ride a horse. I spent about 4 or 5 months learning how to ride a horse, believably, to be a top cowboy that my character was. And then Cutting Edge, learning to skate. So that we had 3 months, and neither Moira and I could skate one lick. And MGM, who produced the movie, rented out this ice rink in Manhattan. I was living in Manhattan, and Moira, we're both from Long Island. She was living on Long Island, and they rented out this rink called Sky Rink, which was like 47th Street and 9th Avenue in New York. And it was on the 7th floor. It was kind of weird taking an elevator up to play hockey. But so they rented out that rink for us, and we had it every morning, and we had coaches and trainers, and we worked our butts off, and it really made the movie better. They still use doubles. I mean, Moira worked on figure skating. I worked more on the hockey side. And she got to a point where she was landing, after 3 months, she was landing single axle jumps, which, it's no big deal. Like, it's not going to get you to the Olympics. Like, if you're a 9-year-old figure skater and you've been skating for 3 years, you're landing axle jumps. But the idea that she was a grown woman and that she had learned that in 3 months was unbelievable. And, we both we had learned how to, sort of fake it well enough to make the movie. And then she broke her leg, so landing a jump. So she couldn't skate at all in the movie. She has a tremendous stunt double, but it meant they had to use me more than they had planned to. So a lot of trickeration in the photography. A lot of times you see me skating, I'm skating with Moira's double, or else sometimes I'm skating with the skating coordinator, Robin Cousins, who was a British champion figure skater. He would be like, you wouldn't see who was in front of me, but when you skate with a really good double in pairs figure skating, or like if an amateur skates with a pro, you imitate their stride, and it makes you look a lot better. So that movie has a lot of. It's too bad they don't have all the behind the scenes stuff that they have these days, because we had some really cool old school kind of trickery that to make all that stuff come off.
Ryan, go ahead.
You were in my favorite movie of all time, Lonesome Dove. It was packed with stars on that cast as well. Tommy Lee Jones, Robert Duvall, Ricky Schroeder, Danny Glover, Steve Buscemi, of course, the beautiful Diane Lane. So what was it like to be part of that amazing project?
That was just a great experience. I mean, everybody that was there knew it was going to be something really special. And, as I mentioned, I'm from Long Island, and Tommy Lee Jones found out that some kid from Long Island who didn't know how to ride a horse was playing Dish Boggett. And he didn't like that at all, because he's like a 7th generation Texan. And he decided that he was going to get rid of me. So he went to CBS and said, you got to get rid of this guy. We need a real cowboy. And CBS said, you know what, we're keeping him, because I was I was like a teeny bopper, whatever. I had a good name at that time, and they sort of thought I was good for the project. So Tommy Lee decided, I think, that he was going to get me injured. So he took me on a cattle roundup at his ranch and put me on an unbroken polo pony, and the horse threw me, and luckily I landed on my feet. But I think his plan was I'd get injured and go, limping home to New York, and they'd get some kid from Amarillo, Texas to play the part. But his evil plan didn't work out.
Paul, go ahead.
DB, is there a movie, a role that you were either too busy to maybe go for, or you kind of passed on, and then once that movie came out and you saw that role, you were like, oh, maybe I kind of regret not getting that or going for that or something like that?
I mean, there's always ones that, that get away that, for one reason or another, you don't end up in them, or I wasn't offered so many movies where I passed on them, but there were a few that, that I missed out on. But one of the ones is Home Alone. They sent me the script to play the part opposite Joe Pesci, one of the burglars, and I just didn't get that movie. I thought it was really kind of dumb, and Macaulay Culkin was such a star. He made that whole thing work. And Daniel Stern, who played the part, was tremendous. I mean, I think he probably did better than I would have done, but I definitely see that movie and I'm like, oh, it would have been fun to be in there.
Can't say no to a John Hughes film. Oh, man.
No.
So normally when I do this show, I'm wearing a hat and it says The Chosen on it, which is my favorite TV show of all time. It's written, directed by Dallas Jenkins. So I wanted to ask you, how was it to work for him on The Resurrection of Gavin Stone, which is also one of my favorite movies? And what was it like to work on a Christian film?
Oh, thanks. Yeah, Dallas is a great guy. I knew him for many years, and we both moved to Illinois around the same time. And he reached out to me and he said, "Hey, I'm making this movie. You want to do it? We're making it at my church." And I was like, "Okay, well, where's your church?" He said, "It's in Elgin." And I thought it would be like a little church on the corner, but it's this massive, church. And they had a lot of resources, and I really liked the script of this. It's about a guy he's a kind of a Hollywood scammer, like kind of a male Lindsay Lohan who keeps getting in trouble. And the judge, for people who haven't seen it, the judge basically has ordered him, you either can go pick up trash on the highway or you got to go volunteer at this church, this big church. And he figures, well, I could probably scam the church easier than the prison guards. So I'll take this opportunity. And then the church is doing an Easter pageant and he auditions for the role of Jesus and he gets the part. So it's kind of a good setup because I play the pastor and my character knows that he's a scammer, but at the same time, I feel like, he might find redemption if he embodies as an actor the role of Jesus. And so it's a nice movie and it's certainly a Christian movie, but what I think is good about it is it avoids a lot of the pitfalls of the Christian movie where it's there's always this, it gets very heavy handed in most Christian movies. And I think what's great about what Dallas does in The Resurrection of Gavin Stone and even more in The Chosen is it's not heavy handed. He's a really good storyteller and he's a really good actor and he's a really good writer. And so all those things allow him to avoid, making these kind of like smack you in the face Christian stories.
A lot of Christian movies don't have the greatest acting, so he does very good with that, getting good actors. Yeah. Kevin, one of your favorite wrestlers, HBK, Shawn Michaels, was in that movie. So, do you have time for one more each?
Sure.
All right, Kevin, go.
So you've been in quite a few movies and quite a few TV shows. Is there one role that sticks out to you that was like your favorite and you really enjoyed filming it? Which one would that be?
Well, other than the ones we talked about, Cutting Edge and 8 Men Out and Lonesome Dove are probably my three favorites that I've ever had. But there was another show called Harsh Realm, which was Chris Carter, the guy who did the X-Files and Millennium. It was a show that only stayed on for 9 episodes on Fox. And it was a really, really good show, but it was really expensive. And we didn't get good ratings right away. And Rupert Murdoch did not get the show. But anyway, I played a character in that show called Mike Pinocchio. And he's a little bit like Han Solo. And the movie was ahead of its time. The show was ahead of its time. It's a little bit like The Matrix. Like the Army has this game where it's a training game where you get put into suspended animation and then your essence gets inserted into this training game. But if you get killed inside the training game, you're dead. And it was really a good show. And Max Martini's in it, who directed the movie. That's where I met him. He directed the Manson Brothers Midnight Zombie Massacre. Terry O'Quinn is in it, who is Moira Kelly's dad in The Cutting Edge, and he's a great actor. And it was just a really, really good show. And I just wish it had gotten more of a chance. So there's 9 episodes. And also Michelle MacLaren made her directing debut. She became the person who Breaking Bad and Game of Thrones. She's one of the great TV directors now. And I'm sure she's doing features too. I'm just not aware of it. So it was a really, really great show. And I think that if it had been given a chance to go, it would have done better. Tobin Bell is in it. He, it's like every episode had like great guest actors and it's beautifully filmed. And, so that was kind of the one that was a disappointment when that got canceled.
Right.
Before you became an actor, who were your favorite actors and who were the ones that you sort of looked up to and, sort of influenced you?
Well, before I had any idea about being an actor, I got confused that like my grandfather died when I was like 4 years old. and he fought in World War I, and he was a little bit of a dancer and a singer. And so when I was really little, my dad showed me Yankee Doodle Dandy on TV, and I thought that Jimmy Cagney was my uncle. I mean, my grandfather. And I was like, so I got a little confused for a few years. I thought, so James Cagney was the first actor I was ever really aware of for kind of weird reasons. But I stuck with him for a very long time. When I became an actor, I still really admired him and tried to model some of what my technique was off of him. And also Humphrey Bogart is my all-time favorite, because I think he's the greatest. And I mean, I think he's still underrated as an actor. Like people treat him like, oh yeah, he's Bogey, just doing Bogey. But there's an awful lot of range and subtlety between the Maltese Falcon and African Queen and Treasure of Sierra Madre, the Kane Mutiny Court Martial. I mean, there's a lot of subtle gradations between his different performances that, you know, I think he really was a master of film acting.
Well,
I represented in a prior show Chris Chelios, and I saw where you were really close friends with him. I think he's the godfather to Cade, if that's accurate. And,
yeah, that's right.
I think you were pretty good friends with Grant Jennings, who we'd had on. Is hockey something you were really interested in? And that, when you learned how to skate for cutting edge, did you ever get out there with any of these guys?
Yeah, you know, I was always a hockey fan growing up. I grew up New York Ranger fan, and, you know, I got to know Rod Gilbert, who we just lost. Great man. And you know, I was always a fan. So when the cutting edge came along, it was a fun opportunity. And Chris Chelios is actually in the movie for a minute. He and I had been friends for 5 or 6 years at that point. And he came up to Toronto where we were filming. I thought it would be funny if he was the guy that injured my character and knocked him out of hockey. I thought that would be funny for all the hockey fans. And so they were going to film it that way. And then he was there about 6 hours. And he was like, I am so bored, I'm leaving. So he ended up, so they had somebody else actually run me. But, you know, that it's a long day when you're making a movie, and I would have my skates on and Moira as well, after she healed her broken leg. You know, sometimes you have your skates on for 10, 12 hours and your feet are swollen. It's, you know, it's not that comfortable. But so yeah, after the movie came out, I got invited to play in a lot of celebrity games, and Michael J. Fox was before he got sick, he would always play, and they had this Hollywood All-Stars team, and with my great friend Kiefer Sutherland, who's one of my favorite people in Hollywood of all my peers. He's just one of the greatest guys, and I also think he's a terrific actor, and now he's making music, and he's just a great guy to sit next to in a hockey locker room. And you know, there's a lot of great memories from those days. With Alex Trebek was on that team, really great person. And you know, we played a game at the Boston Garden against Cam Neely and Terry O'Reilly, and it was just really fun. And you know, just to get out there with those guys, and you know, I think they enjoy getting out there too. And so those are some great memories, and you know, cutting edge brought a lot into my life. Yeah.
So we'll get you out of here with this. I want you to tell me about your new movie coming out this Friday, of course. Manson Brothers Midnight Zombie Massacre. That's a long title, but I like that. That sounds pretty scary. But since I'm talking about scary, the first movie that ever scared me and gave me nightmares is Fire in the Sky. I don't know what it was like filming it, but the scene where you're like kind of like being pulled down the hallway and then you're on the table, like, can you walk me through that? Because that freaked me out, and even watching it as an adult, it still freaks me out.
Yeah, Fire in the Sky was a really cool setup and a really cool script, and all those visual effects were done in Marin County with Industrial Light and Magic. So you already knew who they were. You know, they were the state-of-the-art shop, and so I was very excited to get to play this part. And they built these amazing sets, and there's very little digital effects at that time. Like, it's 1993, I think, or 94, and you know, so those sets are real sets, and I was on wires suspended from the ceiling usually, and to simulate the zero gravity. So it was hard work, you know, because you know, you gotta, if you just hang on the wire, you look like you give away the gag. You know, the audience, even when they take it out with when they scratch the wire out of the film, you can tell if the actor's not, you have to kind of keep your body really straight, or just, the audience kind of instinctively knows that the wires are coming from your hips. So you have to kind of hide that with your body language. And it's hard work, but you sort of knew when I saw the sets, and you know, the one scene where they drag me through the thing and you see the little eyeglasses spinning around, that was right there on the set. And I thought, oh my God, that's just like right out of a nightmare. Like, it was just such a cool idea. And that they had the weightless eyeglasses spinning around in the UFO. So I just thought while we were making that, this is going to be really cool. And unfortunately, I think they spent all the money on that sequence when I'm on the spaceship, and then the rest of the movie we made it in kind of in a hurry. So it's still a good movie, but that 12 or 15 minutes I think is really, really great.
Well, for someone who watched it in my school days, let me tell you, it worked, man. It was scary. It was good. Well, thank you so much, DB. Oh yeah, tell us about your new movie. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, well, Max Martini, I mentioned we worked together on Harsh Realm, which if anybody's curious, get those DVDs and pop them in. It's a really good show. And anyway, Max is a really terrific actor. He's been in a lot of stuff, and he's a great guy. And so he told me about this story that had been given to him by another guy who lives here in Chicago, Mike Carey. And Mike and I did Chirac together, Spike Lee movie, where I played the mayor of Chicago. And it was, a kind of a weird musical movie about gang violence. And it was it's an interesting movie, but it didn't really work entirely for a lot of people. But anyway, Mike and I became friends on that movie. And then when the script came around, he told me that he used to be a professional wrestler, which I didn't know. And like back in the early 90s, he was a wrestler named, Skull Manson. And so the idea of this movie is that, these kind of wrestlers who were famous on this local wrestling circuit want to make a comeback, and they got to get big fast. They don't have any money, so they buy a bunch of steroids from China, and the steroids turn everybody into zombies. So it's just the right amount of stupid that it kind of works. It's like a midnight movie. You get yourself a glass of wine or your favorite substance, and I think it's a very satisfying, genre type movie that, especially, midnight movie.
And again, that's coming out September 10th. That's this Friday. It's going to be released in 10 cities, and it's also on demand. So if it's not coming out in your city, I don't know if it's coming out down here in Tampa or not. I'll have to check. Make sure you see it on demand. Thank you so much, DB Sweeney, for joining us tonight. This was one of the coolest moments of my life. I appreciate that a lot. And just an honor to have you on. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you guys all. You guys are really astute film panelists. And it was really, that was great. A great experience to hear everybody's opinions about everything. And thank you all for being on, and I hope we get to do it again.
Thanks, DB.
Everybody who's watching, make sure you hit subscribe on whatever you're watching on. Have a good night.